Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now then, this is going to be a series of instructional videos, and what I'm going to concentrate on in this series is setting up Rega tonearms. Now, when I say setting up, I don't mean lining the cartridge. We'll assume that's already done. It's going to be to set the tracking weight and to set the anti-skate, or bias as it should be called really. So there's various models from over the years, so I'm going to try and go right back. So all the current stuff and some of the very early ones as well. So just to get it all covered, because even though the arms look very similar to each other, there's different methods of setting up all the different sort of features on there. So hence the video. So off we go. Okay, so I've got a really nice planar 2 in the jig. This comes with the RB250. It's quite an early one because we've got the lime green lettering. Not very early. It's not a wooden surround or anything like that, but it's probably late 80s, early 90s. This comes with the RB250, which is quite iconic actually, the 250. Some people prefer, I've never quite seen it, but some people prefer the 250 to the 300. I think it's because theoretically it could be better. There's a certain parts of the design, like the fact it's the way the top gimbal is, or whatever you call it, is slightly different on this, and the fact it hasn't got any spring loading for tracking weight. I think the 300 is a better arm really. In practice it's a better arm, but I can sort of see the arguments for it. And that's why lots of people who do modifications to tone arms use the 250 as a base. They tend not to use the 300s really. Usually mess them up, but that's another story. So other versions of this, the tone arm on the NAD 533 turntable is a 250. The Moth 250 tone arm is a 250. Also we've got the RB202 and the RB220, which is the current one, all kind of based on the same principle. So if you have one of those, then this applies to you as far as setup goes. There is one exception which I'll talk about as we go through the setup. There's one version of that, or a time period on one of those models where it's slightly different, but I'll talk that one through as we go. Okay, so I'll set the camera up and I'll show you the setup. Okay, first thing to do is to sort of acclimatise yourself with what we've got to adjust. Now, no, RB250, 220, 202, Moth, NAD, whatever. It's not obvious straight away. All we've got is a little slider control down the bottom of here, which I'll show you. If you unclip and move the arm across, the little green button there slides up and down, and that's your bias control, and that's basically putting a magnetic force on the arm to give some sort of sideways force. When you're setting up, what you want to do is put that to 0 initially, because what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and find the 0 float point of the arm, and what you don't want is it sort of moving to the side all the time while you're trying to set up. Now, I said that one of the versions of these tone arms was different. I think it was the early versions of the 220 tone arm didn't have that control. It was preset to 2 grams because Rega decided that it was confusing people, so we'll just preset it to 2 grams and that covers most cartridges. In reality, the internet got hold of it and got very cross about it. Yes, and it also, I didn't like it without this bias control because of what I've just said. What you want to try and do when you're setting up, you want it out of circuit really, because the arm's swinging across rapidly as you're trying to find a 0 point is really difficult for people. If you're not used to it, it's made it really difficult. I mean, you'll still get a certain amount of float. The magnet still will be able to see the tone arm a little bit and will kind of gradually move across, but it's a controllable amount. So. And anyway, back to getting ahead of myself a little bit, the actual setup. Now what we're trying to do here is set the weight at the front of here to 0 initially. It's the same as the RB250s and the RB titaniums and all the other versions of the tone arm. The initial stages, you want to find the 0 point here. Now we haven't got a gauge or anything, so it's not kind of, you're trying to find the 0 point so then you can use the gauge. What we've got is a counterweight here, which you'll notice it's quite heavily threaded on here, and there's a little peg internally in there. What you want to do is put the counterweight on, just give it a little push initially until the thread picks up. Picked up more than I wanted it to then, but anyway. But basically, you can just push it up and down, but really once it's onto the thread, you can just turn it. What I've forgotten to mention, and I've forgotten to mention this in the other videos as well, when we're setting the tone arm for weight, what you want to do is take the little cover off. If you've got a cover on the cartridge, take the cover off it. If you've got a little flip up protector for the stylus, flip it up into the playing position so it's weight wise it will be as is when it's playing. So that's off. So if you release the arm and drop the cueing lever, what you do is sort of hold. I was doing it this way, and generally I do it like this and just hold the little lever there. So what you want to try and do is move the weight in until when you let go of it, see how it's going up there? When you let go, it will stay in place. Now that's dropped. I'm being a bit sort of over enthusiastic with this, just to sort of show the differences really. Still going up, so fractions to time. That's slightly out a bit, I think, with that. I'd say when you let go of it now, it kind of starts. You can see it moves this way. Now that's because there's just a little bit of bias still active. If I turn the bias up and let go of it, it really flies. So keep that as low as you can. So that's 0. So when the weight is in that position, there's 0 weight here. Now the clever thing with this arm is it works by numbers of rotation. So I'd clip it back in, keeping note that there's a blob on here, and at 180 degrees on the other side there's another blob. So if you do half a turn is 1 gram. So 1 gram, 2 grams. Simple as that. So we've now got 2 grams on this end. This cartridge actually needs 1.8, so it's a bit approximate. We just knock it back a little bit, and then we can say that's 1.8. Just from experience, really. If you're slightly a little bit worried about that, you can buy yourself a little gauge and just double check yourself. But generally, it's fairly good actually. The 250, it seems to work fairly well. Now, once you've got that weight set, you get your little dial down here and just push that up to roughly the same. So just put just under 2. That's generally the best way to do this. Don't sort of be led by the internet, because you'll find there's all sorts of crazy stuff on there. There's the blank disc method of putting a blank disc on your record player, getting it spinning, putting the stylus on and it, adjusting it till it stays in the right position. That is not correct. That is not the way to set bias at all. I will be doing a separate video on this, but it's the actual requirement for this setting here varies massively across the disc, and it varies depending on what sort of music you listen to, whether it's a loud passage or a quiet passage. So what you're actually setting it to is the best average, really. It's so that if there's a loud passage, then it's not too far off. If it's a quiet passage, it's not too far off. What you don't want, because if you set it on a blank disc, generally, I mean, we're set to 1.8 here. If you use a blank disc to set up, it will probably be about 0.8 of a gram or 1 gram. I'm calling it grams. I don't know if it is grams actually, really, I suppose, but in real terms. But anyway, that would mean on a quiet passage it's probably okay. But as soon as everything kicks in musically, or towards the end of side or whatever, it's way out. So don't do that. Just basically set it to what, and that seems to work really well. And like I say, I will do a video on this. I'm going to try and find a way of showing why that's inaccurate. Anyway, I'm going on too long about that one. So yeah, that's it. That's all set up. I would probably say as soon as you finish, put your stylus guard back on again. If I can do it without. I'm not doing this without my glasses. There you go. They're on. Okay, so hope that was helpful. Like I said, there's going to be a series of these. So if this doesn't cover your tone arm, then if you search through, it will be covered amongst these videos. If you like what you're seeing, you can buy a coffee for me. If you go to the main website and if you want to sort of show appreciation there, if you follow the Buy Me a Coffee link, you can click and whatever, and put a little message on there as well. I like to hear how people have been helped with stuff anyway, because that's kind of why I do it really, is to try and help people out. So yeah, till the next video, see you soon.